Every religion in the world has a drink appropriate to it. Christianity and Judaism are wine. Islam is coffee. Hinduism, milk, or maybe pani. And Buddhism is tea. Appropriately enough, because Buddhism is the way of awakening. The word Buddha means the awakened one. And tea is the awakened. Especially the kind of tea that is drunk in tea ceremony, where you don't drink steeped tea, but powdered tea, very finely powdered, which is whipped in with the water. So you drink the actual tea. And there's a kind of it called koicha, which is drunk very thick, almost like spinach soup. And that really keeps you awake. I recommend it instead of methadone. The legend is, of course, that Bodhidharma, who is supposed to have brought the Zen type of Buddhism from India to China, somewhere after 450 AD perhaps, if he really was a historical character, that one night he was meditating and fell asleep. And in a great fury, when he woke, he cut off his eyelids and threw them to the ground, and they sprang up as the first tea plant. For as you know, the leaf of the tea is rather shaped like an eyelid. And in the course of time, it became customary for Zen monks to drink tea to keep themselves awake during long spells of meditation. And as the behavior in a Zen monastery is rather ritualistic and formal, the way they drank tea became in due course ceremonious. And then, much later, the drinking of tea in this way became a ceremony also for lay people. And it was modeled in this way by the great Senno Rikyu, and from him descend at least 5 different schools of the tea ceremony through various branches of his family. Some of them very formal and very difficult, such as the common, best-known Urasenke school, which is the dominant school in Japan today, and which is the kind of tea ceremony that you ordinarily see when somebody puts on a performance. I find it excessively effective, very uncomfortable, and is mostly practiced by young ladies as a sort of accomplishment which they learn to be a lady. But it's painful. It's very, very stiff and formal. On the other end is the Kankyuan school, which is it's very elegant but much less formal, much easier, but practiced with enormous skill. And then there is a kind of tea ceremony still served by Zen monks and literary men who are just entertaining their friends, artists and so on, which is very informal indeed. And that's the kind I shall be showing you. Now, the interesting thing is that this ceremony has no obviously religious character. It is quite secular. It is just drinking tea and having pleasant conversation in surroundings of peacefulness and simplicity. And this derives from an essential aspect of Zen. And I want you to try and understand the blending of ritual with simplicity, first of all. There was a Houston Smith, you know, who's a professor of philosophy at MIT, was traveling in Japan, and a Zen master was showing him around, and he noticed that every time they passed the image of a Buddha or Bodhisattva in the temple, the Zen master stopped and bowed to it. And Houston Smith said, "I can't understand why you go through this ritual of bowing to things. I thought you Zen people were above all rituals. You know, I'd just as soon spit at it." And the master says, "You spit, I bow." So, here is this question. Why ritual And why does Zen have a peculiar penchant for expressing itself in a secular way? Now, ritual, to begin with, is something that makes Americans uncomfortable. I remember as a minister at one time, whenever I went out to dinner, they asked me to say grace. And after saying grace, there was a ghastly silence. And I had to start the conversation flowing easily again. Because there's something, I don't know, I can't find a proper adjective or an attitude which Protestants have to ritual. They don't have much, but they have some. But when they do it, they look down their noses and feel that somehow an element has entered into things of a Godhead who is wagging the finger at you and saying, you should at this moment think seriously about whether you've been good or not. And so everybody is then reminded uncomfortably by some words addressed to the good Lord that they really are all too human after all, and somehow God makes everybody uncomfortable. That's why they're getting rid of it. Now he's dead. Of course, that kind of God never lived, even except in people's imaginations. But this idea, you see, of being watched all the time by a loving but severely judging father. You know how it is when you were children in school and you were writing at your desk, and the teacher, however much you respected the teacher, wandered round and looked over your shoulder while you were working. It puts you off completely. You want to show the finished product, and leave me alone while I get it together. As a saying, never show anything unfinished to children or fools. So, in the same way, this God makes everybody feel uncomfortable, and therefore any ritual in which the Lord is invoked, it makes people feel uncomfortable, and it passes on from that to many Americans are quite uncomfortable as a formal dinner. You dress up in black tie and tuxedo. Everything is served in order, and the wine is properly handled and all that sort of thing. It's very beautiful. But people feel that somehow it's effective, and Americans like to give the impression of being coaxing, sincere, down to earth, no nonsense, you see. And so frills are regarded as unessential. But we have thereby impoverished our life enormously. And also, we don't handle things skillfully as a result. We are clumsy. Because actually, ritual is a mood that comes into any action performed with complete awareness. I don't mean that you stare at what you're doing and concentrate on it with effort. But a ritual to a thing helps you to do it in an orderly way, just as a practical matter. And also, it is a way of turning everyday action into meditation. And Zen is particularly keen on this, that meditation is not just sitting for so long and concentrating on a koan or on nothing. Zen is everyday life, and the enlightened Zen person doesn't make any distinction between the nirvana world of final reality and the samsara world of everyday life. Therefore, to understand this, you must first realize that it is a basic principle of Zen that you're it. That this, whatever it is, to which nobody gives a name because, well, it's been called suchness, it's been called emptiness, it's been called the Tao, the way of nature, but it's fundamental for Zen that you do not think about it. That is to say, you don't have any concept of it. Because that which we really are, and which all things are, you might say, the fundamental energy of the universe, is so basic that if you have an idea of it, it must be wrong. Just in the same way that you cannot bite your own teeth, that you cannot look into your own eyes without using a mirror, that you cannot see the color of the inside of your head. So that which is absolutely fundamental, which is you, must not be conceptualized, and you don't need to get it. You don't need to hang on to it. You don't need to cling to it, Rock of Ages, cleft for me, or anything like that. Because it's what you are, and it's what there is, and all that there is. And that's you. And it is subject to, or rather, it appears as something and nothing, as solid and space, as light and darkness, as life and death. The yang, or positive force, and the yin, or negative force, are its outward manifestation. And as you well know, you can't have yang without yin, or yin without yang. You can't have life without death, or death without life, or solid without space, or space without solid. They are polarized, like the north and the south pole of a magnet. And so, just because they go together, however different they may look, nonetheless, they are inseparable. And this indicates that there is something mysterious between them, a sort of conspiracy. But nobody can say what it is, because all thinking is either black or white, or grey, which is at the muzzle. What it is in common between black and white, between inside and outside, between up and down, that can never be stated. Because everything we can talk about, we talk about it by putting it in a box, called classification. We sort our experiences into pigeonhole: animal, vegetable, mineral. See? Is or is you is, or is you ain't. And what it is that cannot be sorted into any pigeonhole, because it is what is in common between the inside of the box and the outside, we have no way of conceiving. And therefore, for this reason, Zen does not take any image, any idea, or any doctrine with essential seriousness. It has nothing to say, only to show. And what it shows you is what you see all the time, and you can't miss. Because there it is, and here it is. I am it, and you are it. He is it, and she is it, and it is it, and this is it, and that is that. That's a poem by James Brown. Now, but you see, in the ordinary way, people don't feel any conflict, because we are beguiled by the multiplicity of things that we see around us, by this as distinct from that, by life as distinct from death, by light as distinct from darkness. And we think that the universe is an energy, and energy is a thing that's apt to get tired, wear out, run out, like an electric battery runs out, or the gas runs out of your car. Therefore, we always feel that the universe is very precarious, and that the positive side may easily lose and fizzle out, and only the negative side will remain, and that blackness and non-being may swallow everything up. Well, to the Chinese, that's a fantastic notion, because the moment you get to the deepest dark, you generate the seed of the brightest light. That's why in the yin-yang, the circle with the S-curve through the middle, you see the black half and the white half. And in the bulge of the circle, like the eye of a fish, there is a dot of the opposite color. That is the seed of being within non-being, and the seed of non-being within being. Lao Tzu says, to be and not to be arise mutually. It isn't that there is first nothing and then something. Or it might come in that order, but that's like saying the egg comes before the hen. In a way it does. You can say that a hen is one egg's way of becoming other eggs. But it doesn't make any difference where you begin. It's always the same thing, because life is a pulsating process. Tiniest pulsations of the propagation of light through deep sounds where you can hear the pulsation, to much longer pulsations, day and night, and finally the coming and going of universes. So one is beguiled. Because, you see, what is common to everything that you see? Well, of course, we say sight is common to everything that we see. But we don't see the color of our eyes. I mean of the lens. Because we say that's transparent. If your lens was rose-colored, everything would look rosy until you got used to it. And then it would be just ordinary, except that you wouldn't be able to differentiate reds very clearly. If our eye lens has a color, we don't know what it is. But it's basic to everything. What is the sound of the ear? It's empty. Same way with the color of your head. It's empty. It isn't black, it isn't white, just empty. And so too, when you hear music on the radio or talk on the radio, that is all the vibration of the diaphragm. Every kind of sound is that diaphragm vibrating. But the diaphragm's own sound isn't heard. And nobody announces that these sounds that you are hearing are the vibrations of the diaphragm. So you see, what is basic, absolutely basic, to all experience, to all our senses, to everything, cannot be named, cannot be classified, and therefore, because of that, you forget about it. You lose it. You think that the reality is all the multiplicity of things. But the substrate, what Tillich calls the ground of being, which is the contaminated word for God, now it seems not to be there at all. So we've forgotten that that is you. And the object of Zen is to rediscover that. But to rediscover it in such a way that you do not grasp it in terms of some formula, in terms of some ideas, or even in terms of some particular practice. Because this thing has no terms. And therefore you have to find it by ceasing to grasp yourself or your life in any way, by totally letting go. And of course that takes a lot of nerve. And the discipline of Zen has various functions, but one of them is to convince you by hard work that there is no way whatsoever of getting hold of this thing. I remember Krishnamurti saying the same thing when I was having a talk with him. He was sitting on a couch and he had a couple of cushions. And he took one cushion and put it over here and said, now this is real meditation. This is marvelous, he said. It comes in wave after wave after wave. It is marvelous beyond belief. Now this, he said, this is a sort of preliminary meditation. And this, he said, is to understand beyond any shadow of doubt that there is nothing you can do about it. But you see, until you know you can't, you always have a sneaking suspicion that you can. So then, when you have discovered through hard work that nothing can be done, then you let go and you discover it. Only, as the Mumon Khan Zen textbook says, you are like a dumb man who's had a marvelous dream. Everybody who's had a marvelous dream wants to explain it. Tell the story that you're dumb. You can't say. Your mouth isn't big enough. It would have to be so big that your head would disappear when you open it. So then, when this is understood, two things happen. One, all the energy that hitherto you expended on holding on to yourself and being anxious becomes available for something else. And you feel, zoom, this huge influx of energy. And it's available for just living. Second thing is, there's a curious kind of interior quietness goes along with it then. A sense that there is nowhere to go. Where's your rush? It's here. In other words, that this room in which you're sitting now and this particular time of day in New York City in November 1966 is what there is. Because this, the basic reality, is not in time. It's always now. You can't measure it with a clock any more than you can catch space in a sieve.